Today, we're exploring something that honestly gets treated like a mystical superpower in the tech world. I'm talking about product intuition. If you've ever watched a seasoned leader make a massive $1 million call in about 5 minutes flat and thought, how did they just know? Well, you definitely aren't alone. So, throughout this explainer, we're going to completely demystify this. We'll look at how we can transform product intuition from what looks like a magical gift into a highly systematic, learnable framework. Okay, let's dive into this brilliant quote right out of the gate because it perfectly captures our core thesis. A senior product manager was asked about their incredibly fast decision making, and they simply said, I've just made this kind of decision 50 times before. That's not intuition, that's pattern recognition at scale. I love this because it totally shatters the illusion, right? Intuition isn't some innate superpower you're born with. It is literally just the result of recognizing patterns after putting in the reps. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll cover the myth of intuition, then the 4 foundational pillars, followed by mastering deep market empathy. After that, we'll look at escaping the intuition traps, seeing intuition in the real world, and finally, we'll wrap up with your 30-day mastery plan. Let's jump right into section 1, the myth of intuition. Remember, it's not magic, it's pattern recognition. So as we've established, intuition is a skill built through very deliberate practice. And honestly, this couldn't be more relevant today. For AI product managers specifically, it is the absolute ultimate differentiator. Why is that? Well, because AI environments are just inherently filled with intrinsic uncertainty. You can't guarantee a model is going to converge, and you certainly can't guarantee users will trust the output. In spaces where outcomes simply aren't guaranteed and you can't just safely A/B test your way to a strategy, having this highly developed pattern recognition is exactly what separates competent PMs from the truly phenomenal ones. Moving right along to section 2, the 4 foundational pillars. This is what you absolutely must know to make good decisions fast. Now let's look at the actual structural foundation of intuition. Think of it like a building supported by 4 pillars: domain expertise, user empathy, pattern recognition, and metric literacy. Now here's the catch. These 4 pillars absolutely have to work in harmony. Having domain knowledge without user empathy, that just leads to technically brilliant products that nobody actually wants to use. And having empathy without pattern recognition means you're basically doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. You really do need all 4. Let's break them down one by one. Pillar 1 is domain expertise. To really build this, you can't just passively scroll through a few blogs on your lunch break. You need to actively read industry reports, and honestly, you need to go out and meet over 100 people in your market. We're talking customers, competitors, adjacent players, the whole shebang. You are trying to build a highly detailed mental map. The goal isn't just to generally know your industry, but to reach a level where you can accurately predict your competitors' responses before they even make a move. Next up is Pillar 2, user empathy. And listen, true user empathy isn't something you're going to find in a sterile, perfectly controlled focus group. The requirement here is pretty demanding. You need to spend at least 100 hours a year embedded with users in their actual, real-world environment. You've got to quietly observe them in their natural habitat. You are actively looking for the frustrations they don't voice and the unsaid needs that totally fall outside of formal interviews. What do they care about that seems completely unrelated to your product? Because frankly, that's where real empathy lives. Then we have Pillar 3, pattern recognition. Think of this as the actual engine of your intuition. The method here is highly structured. You need to keep a literal case study journal of product successes and failures. Whenever you're faced with a new situation, you don't just guess or go with your gut. Instead, you compare it to 5 to 10 historical patterns in your journal before making a call. By deliberately doing this, you stop guessing entirely and start forecasting based on concrete historical data. Finally, Pillar 4 is metric literacy. You need to deeply learn statistics and spend 30 minutes every single morning reading your product's metrics like it's your daily newspaper. This daily discipline is an absolute game changer. 30 minutes every morning with your dashboards literally trains your brain to instantly spot healthy growth versus silent warning signs. Over time, you'll intuitively grasp whether a 10% growth spike is coming from power users or new users, and exactly what that means for your long-term retention. All right, on to Section 3, mastering deep market empathy and understanding competitive dynamics. Let's elevate our view from the individual user to the entire ecosystem. Take a close look at this table and ask yourself honestly, where do you sit right now in your market understanding? At level 1, you know your competitors and maybe read their blogs. That's fine, but it's pretty basic. At level 2, you start to understand their constraints and can actually predict their next moves. But operating at level 3, the expert level, that means you aren't just reacting anymore. You are anticipating the entire market's long-term trajectory. You're recognizing completely non-obvious opportunities and positioning yourself in a totally unique way that others simply cannot copy. Section 4. Escaping the intuition traps. Because let's face it, we all need to know how to avoid becoming confidently wrong. Even the pros fall into these traps. Trap number 1 is pattern matching bias. The main symptom here is killing or approving ideas based on an old pattern while completely ignoring different modern contexts. You know the feeling. Your intuition is screaming, "I've seen this fail." But the recovery here is absolutely crucial. You must pause and explicitly state what specific context must be true for that historical pattern to actually apply today. Force yourself to identify the exact conditions to see if this new situation actually matches the old one. Trap number 2 is survivor bias. Look, it is literally human nature to remember our massive wins and completely forget when we just got incredibly lucky. The symptom is only remembering past decisions that worked out, which leads to massive, dangerous overconfidence. So what's your recovery? Keep a decision journal documenting your reasoning and your confidence level at the exact time you made the call. Reviewing it months later to calibrate reality is your absolute best defense against that overconfidence. It keeps you honest. Trap 3 is temporal distance blindness. The symptom here is making bold predictions based on a 5-year-old market reality, using totally outdated competitor references. Markets evolve incredibly fast, right? The recovery is to explicitly date your pattern knowledge. You must mentally date stamp what you know and ask yourself, has the market changed since I actually learned this? Because what was an absolute, undeniable truth in e-commerce back in 2018 might be totally irrelevant today. And trap 4, solution anchoring. The symptom? Defending a specific solution against user feedback in a way that feels almost religious, rather than empirical. You just know your solution is right, even when all the data strongly disagrees. The recovery here requires serious intellectual honesty. You have to separate the problem from the solution. If the data says your beloved solution isn't working, you have to drop it immediately. Change the solution, as long as the underlying problem you're solving is still real. Let's transition into Section 5, Intuition in the Real World. Let's see how expert PMs actually use these skills at massive scale. Picture this. The year is 2014. Microsoft is genuinely in decline, having completely missed the massive mobile revolution. Satya Nadella steps in as CEO. He needs to make incredibly high-stakes, compounding decisions to literally save the company, and he absolutely does not have the luxury of running endless A/B tests to figure out the future. This right here is pattern recognition at scale. Nadella recognized a critical historical pattern. Closed platforms almost always lose to open ones, exactly like Windows Mobile lost to Android. He intuitively recognized that Microsoft's historical identity, being Windows first, was rapidly becoming a massive liability. He relied on that deep pattern recognition to confidently pivot a $2 trillion company away from Windows and towards a completely new platform reality, cloud and services. Now, let's jump over to Facebook in 2008. They have a staggering 100 million users. The product is a massive runaway success, but the business side is struggling heavily with monetization. Essentially, they had massive reach, eyeballs everywhere, but no money. Then Sheryl Sandberg joins as COO, bringing her deep, hard-earned experience from Google's ad business. This is a literal masterclass in deep market empathy. Sandberg completely understood that advertisers didn't just want reach or eyeballs, they wanted guaranteed ROI. She recognized that Facebook had something Google didn't have at that scale, incredibly detailed, specific user identity data. She used this totally unique data mode to build a targeting system so remarkably effective, advertisers were essentially forced to use it. Her profound market empathy turned Facebook's user base into an impenetrable competitive moat. All right, Section 6, your 30-day mastery plan. Let's talk about building this discipline for yourself. We're going to implement the 30-day decision journal. It's just 4 simple steps. 1. Document a major product decision you're making. 2. Write down your exact reasoning and the specific historical patterns you recognized. 3. Record your confidence level on a scale from 0 to 100%. And 4. Note exactly what evidence would definitively prove you wrong. Then, come back and review it after 30 days. Budgeting just 30 minutes a week to track these 4 steps will improve your product intuition faster than months of passive reading ever could. I want to leave you with this final, really important question to reflect on. Think about your own daily choices. If you confidently made a major product decision today, Is it truly driven by actual deep market empathy and hard-earned pattern recognition? Or are you actually just heavily disguised by survivor bias and outdated patterns? Mastering product intuition isn't magic, folks. It starts the exact moment you stop blindly trusting your gut and start interrogating it.